What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk Podcast, coming to you the day after a somewhat quiet Boston Celtics draft. The Celtics only taking that number 45 pick, drafting Juhann Begarin. I think if I'm doing that French accent correct. I'm a little tired. I've got my 84-ounce coffee here to get me through this podcast. We'll see if we can make some sense of what happened on draft night and what's ahead for the Boston Celtics. A somewhat underwhelming night, if only because Begarin projects as a potential draft and stash. He could stay overseas this year, only 18 years old, but I'm just going to call him Air France from now on because you watch the highlights and it is fun. 6'6" shooting guard, has some explosion going to the basket, can finish above the rim. Seems like the sort of player that if he does pan out could be fun to watch, but Celtics likely playing the long game here. Add him to the list along with Juhann Begarin. Maybe we'll get a chance to see both of these guys at Summer League, and we'll get into that a little bit about what's ahead. But no movement from the Celtics. I know. So first off, Celtics fans have been spoiled, right? It feels like the Celtics, even as they've been in the championship hunt in recent years, have been had a surplus of draft picks to choose from. First time since I think 2009 that they didn't have a first round pick. One of the things that I think was striking, we'll get into this later when we play our post draft interview with Brad Stevens, is that the Celtics are really making it a concerted effort here to maintain maximum flexibility moving forward. It's clear, even as they try to sort of fill out this roster and improve from last season, the goal right now is to maintain the sort of flexibility where, whether it's Bradley Beal or whatever the next big star that becomes available is, the Celtics have their draft picks in all the future drafts available, ready to pounce, and can try to make a play for an impact talent that they would likely slot next to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with hopes of elevating to even more of a surefire contender. But busy free agency ahead, a lot of decisions. Brad Stevens joked afterward, he hasn't had a vacation and he might not have one anytime soon because August is just going to be just as busy as July and June and, well, the season before that. So let's start here. The big story on draft night, though, was the Los Angeles Lakers acquiring Russell Westbrook from the Washington Wizards in a deal that saw Washington get Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a late first round pick. And so here's the deal, and Montrezl Harrell. So the Wizards making some moves, and the natural inclination is, beyond the fact that the Lakers have now vaulted to the top, a couple of the Las Vegas books project them now as the favorite to win the NBA title based on these moves. I don't know if I'm ready to go there. The Nets are still supremely talented, but undeniable that Russell Westbrook can fill up the stat sheet. I'm fascinated to see how it works. The Lakers have been rumored to be in on Buddy Hield as well, a shooter that I think could really help them, but we'll see if Russell Westbrook is the right fit there. The bigger story here is, what does it mean for Bradley Beal in his future, as all Celtics fans sort of had their eyes on Beal down in Washington and waiting to see if he'll request a trade or what his future might be. The buzz right now is that Bradley Beal has no plans to ask for his way out of Washington, but that can change in a hurry. And again, he had that whole experience with Jason Tatum before getting COVID and before Team USA took off for Tokyo. So it's going to be fascinating to see exactly how it plays out with Bradley Beal. In the infancy of this deal, I don't think it makes him any more likely to stay in Washington, but it does set the Wizards up with a little bit more flexibility moving forward in terms of, okay, they don't have this cumbersome salary, $40+ million for Russell Westbrook the next 2 years. Can they use that to get into the market for a free agent? Can they go to Bradley Beal and say, who would you like to play with? So now you have, some young talent around you in Kuzma and Harrell. Who else can you get? And is that enough to push them in the mix in the Eastern Conference? I'm not sure. My gut instinct is they really have to hit on whatever they do when they clear this cap space or pursue a move. They need to find the right people. And maybe ultimately it comes down to where Bradley Beal just says, guy I want to play with is Jason Tatum. And so, we got into this last night on our draft special as we were waiting for the 45th pick. Me, Abby, and Scal, breaking down the Westbrook news and trying to figure out what's ahead for the Washington Wizards and Bradley Beal. Scal isn't as bullish as me on the potential for Bradley Beal to power play his way to Boston. And undeniably, there's a lot of dominoes that got to fall. But let's get into that conversation. Here's that segment from last night on both the Bradley Beal pursuit and then a little bit of Lonzo Ball talk on the back end as well.
I mean, doesn't this open the door for some possible movement when it comes to Beal?
So the door is always open. What if Bradley Beal comes out within the next couple months and says, look, all I want to do is I want to play with Jason Tatum, and I'm not going to pick up my player option.
You ain't going to say that.
And I mean, he can say that. Why
not?
He
is not going to say.
Crazier things happen.
He is not going to.
NBA.
Now he might say that behind closed doors. He is not coming out and say, "I want to play with Jason Tatum."
And you can
Come on, man. You know that.
You can play the media game, right, where his agent tells people, and there's reports out there that Bradley Beal is not willing to resign with anyone other than the Boston Celtics. That he's just set on plan. It's essentially the Anthony Davis power play.
Just setting out those smoke signals.
I know, but Scal, have you seen this league in recent years? Like, this is what they do. I'm not saying it's likely.
Not even Anthony Davis came out and said, "I only want to go."
Are you kidding me? His father said he will not
I didn't say anything about mommy and daddy. I didn't say nothing about mommy and daddy.
That's what we're saying.
All I was talking about is not even Anthony Davis, which everybody knew he was going to L.A., said, "I want to go play with LeBron."
That's what Chris is saying, that Bradley Beal, through channels, makes it known that he's only wants to go to Boston.
Yeah, but that's...
right, that's the only way, basically, Chris, that happens.
Right.
Well, no, not necessarily, because...
You don't think?
Because if Jaylen Brown was available, he would be the best player available. There's not a better player out there.
They're not trading Jaylen Brown.
For Bradley Beal. Would you?
You're not getting better.
Okay, then Washington's not going to do it. What do we have? What do you?
So and again, that's why it would have to be a power play situation. And so the big question after the Wizards make this move is, can they entice Bradley Beal to stick around based on where they're going? Okay, they have a much more manageable contract now. Maybe they could be players in free agency in future seasons. They can say, hey, Bradley Beal, who do you want to play with? Let us go get that. Let us build a legitimate contender around you. Now, I don't know if he's going to be fired up to play with Kyle Kuzma, and I think if it comes down to it, he's going to look around and go, probably rather play with Jason Tatum, rather play with some other stars in this league. So I still think there's a chance that Bradley Beal just sort of makes his intentions known, that his future is not in Washington. A lot of dominoes have to fall. The Celtics would have to, again, they would need him to power play because there are going to be other teams with better packages of talent, especially in the absence of Jaylen Brown, but you cannot rule it out.
I do. I want to put you on the spot, though, Scal. Would you do a trade, Jaylen Brown, for Bradley Beal?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not in that position. I don't have to make those decisions.
I wouldn't.
No, I don't. The way I look at it is, like, if Bradley Beal wants to get traded, and there's no way the conversation doesn't start with Jaylen Brown. So you guys can play pretend.
Even if he's forcing his way out, he's saying, I'm not going to sign long term with anywhere else.
What is
Washington Wizards could keep him.
Absolutely.
And then let him. So what are you going to get? A trade exception when he goes into a free agency in the summer of 2022?
I mean, what are you going to get with?
You're going to give Al Horford's partially guaranteed contract, or some combination of Marcus Smart and young players. You know, please hold my heart. If Robert Williams was in that trade, I might fall in my chair.
You do know, outside of the Celtics and the Wizards, there are 28 other teams out there that want Brad Beal, right?
But we're doing it under the guise that he is going to signal that he will not re-sign with anybody else besides Boston.
That's the only way it happens. Yeah. All right. So Bradley Beal.
All right, I could go with that. Wait, what does the guy say on Dumb and Dumber? It's
so
like
you're saying there's a chance.
Or like one in a million.
One in a million. Saying there's a chance. Still holding out that hope for Bradley Beal. But, Scal, also some talk. Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium, I think, reporting that the Celtics have shown interest in Lonzo Ball, along with, other teams in the Bulls and the Raptors. But do you think there is a way the Celtics can get Ball here in free agency?
Yeah, do
you want him?
So wait, first of all, free agency, no.
Okay.
Right? I thought you were going to ask me a different question, but no. So in free agency, no. But you could sign and trade. The only question I would have would be like New Orleans, right? Obviously, here's what's really going on right now. Toronto is linked. Kyle Lowry is linked to the Pelicans. They just made this trade to make space for Kyle Lowry. So they're already linked together. So Toronto Raptors are saying, like, well, why don't we take Lonzo Ball? We like Lonzo Ball. We got Scotty Barnes now. We got Fred VanVleet. Like, everyone thought we were going to take Jalen Suggs, and then we ended up taking Scotty Barnes. Now we need a point guard if Kyle Lowry leaves. So I can see how they're tied in. But then I think, like, I'm not smart enough to figure out how a three-way deal happens unless, like, somehow we can get, like, Patrick Williams out of Chicago. Why would Chicago, who has cap space, why would they, like, want to get involved with the Celtics on this one?
So if you've seen the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia gif where the guy's trying on the board to make it happen, Charlie, I have tried for weeks to figure out how to get Lonzo Ball to Boston. You would have to hit rewind, go back to the trade deadline last year and acquire him and roll the dice as a restricted free agent, which I think they should have weighed heavier in that moment. But the problem with the sign and trade is not only would you be hard capping yourself and probably taking yourself out of the possibility to re-sign Evan Fournier, there's base year compensation that comes into play that makes just maneuvering the trade extremely difficult. You probably have to go the three-team trade route, and I just cannot wrap my head around the way it happens. And I think it's far more likely that a team like Chicago uses cap space to go get Lonzo Ball, and then you find a point guard somewhere else.
Is there anybody on Chicago that we could take, like, in this situation? You know, Kyle Lowry.
To make the money work.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could jump in as a third team. Again, Chicago, what you're obviously thinking is like Satoransky. You could take him into your traded player exception. But again, if you're jumping in as a third team, you want something else as an asset, and maybe that's a draft pick. I don't know. But that, again, it's complicated.
Gotcha.
In a dream scenario, Scal, do you want Lonzo Ball?
You mean like we could spin whatever we want? No, I'd rather have LeBron. I mean. Abby,
Fair.
I'm
just saying in a dream scenario, if you can make the salary numbers work.
I'm sitting here making Bradley Beal pitches, and you're laughing at me, and here you are, you're like, oh, LeBron.
She said my dream.
LeBron.
She said I dream of other things.
KD would be great.
Ball, but if you ask for my dream scenario, no, it's probably not.
To make the money work.
It's probably not Lonzo Ball.
Thank you, Scal.
I could dream pretty big.
All right, so a couple things there. Again, you know, I know it's a little bit of a, whether it's the cap route or the trade route, there's a lot of hurdles to get Bradley Beal to Boston. But just ultimately think if Jason Tatum goes to Celtics management and says, this is the guy I want to play with, and there's a roadmap here for doing it while not having to sacrifice Jaylen Brown, you know, if ultimately that's what makes Jason Tatum happy, if that's what Bradley Beal wants, you know, they'll figure out a way to make it happen. And it might be cumbersome, and Bradley Beal might get some blowback for asking his way out of Washington. But from his perspective, it's as simple as saying, you know, I'm not resigning next year, and I really want to go play with Jason Tatum. And then and he's not going to be the one, as Scal pointed out, he's not going to be the one who comes out and says that. It'll be through his agent or through sources around the league. But the intent will be clear, much like when Anthony Davis said he didn't want to go to Boston. You know, the Lakers didn't have the best package for Anthony Davis. They put together a solid grouping, obviously, but it was the fact that Anthony Davis wasn't going to be willing to play anywhere but Los Angeles that sort of helped steer his way there. So Bradley Beal would sort of have to dig in. And I don't know if he's that kind of player to sort of, you know, he shows a lot of loyalty here to Washington. But it's going to be a never-ending story. We're going to analyze every single tweet from Bradley Beal, from Jason Tatum when he's putting up Shamrock logos on Instagram pages for every time there's a Beal rumor. So, but it's a fun little game. And it's cool that the Celtics are in a position where Jason Tatum is a big enough superstar where he might have a little pull. And we'll see whether it's Beal or otherwise as he goes through this Team USA experience. The other topic there with Lonzo Ball, you know, I really think the Celtics should have been more aggressive, maybe pursuing Ball last year. I understand trying to trade assets, and it would have been a hefty cost to go get a restricted free agent isn't ideal, but because of the Celtics situation and you can't really take on a player in a sign and trade without being hard capped, it limits the avenues they have this summer to adding talent. And I wonder if you could have got Lonzo Ball in-house at the end of last season instead of, say, Evan Fournier, and at least got to look at him and see how he fit alongside the Jays. And were you willing to pay that whatever his next contract is going to be, 20-something million? You would have been in a more of a power position to lock him up before others get a shot at him. And again, you would have felt a little bit more confident about how he fits. But, you know, again, admittedly, there was some disadvantages to that because you would have probably had to sacrifice more first-round picks. You know, who knows if you would have had the necessary assets to move off Kemba at that point. You know, so understandable why it didn't come together. But as someone who really likes Lonzo Ball's game and who thinks he would fit well with this core, with the size and the passing ability and his growing shooting game. I would love to have seen that. But the Celtics have to figure that out. Is it Marcus Smart? Is he the long-term fit at that point guard spot? We did the mailbag in last week's episode or earlier this week. And, I told you guys, I don't know what the plan is at the point guard spot. I think, they want to see what Marcus can do. I think they love the chemistry that he has with the Jays. And if he can really buy into being that pass first point guard, it could really work out. But Marcus has got to show that he's ready for that role and can morph his game a little bit, focus on defense and playmaking. If not, the Celtics got to figure out what the long-term play is at that point guard spot. So let's spin it forward. We got a chance, before we even dive into the analysis, we got a chance to sit down with Brad Stevens after the draft last night, the wee hours of the morning, pick his brain a little bit on the new pick, Air France Begarin, and what led them to picking him at number 45, but also what's ahead for this team. So let's get into that interview now, and we'll talk a little bit on the backside. But here's our sit down with Brad Stevens.
We welcome in the Celtics president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens. Brad, this was your first time in the war room as the man calling the shots. I know not many of the parts around you changed, but was it different this time around?
I wouldn't say it's that much different. Obviously it wasn't a night. We didn't have 8 picks, so which we've had, at least one other time since I've been here, thankfully. So I'm excited that, we were able to get who we got at 45. He's a guy that we saw earlier this week that had got a chance to come in and work out for us, that we've been watching for a long time, and that has a lot of NBA-ready qualities. So he's a guy that, we're excited about. And, but as far as the night and, the room or whatever the case may be, I think that stuff's probably all a little bit overrated. You're just trying to stay on your toes and trying to be organized heading into the day, so that you're ready for anything that may come your way.
You mentioned that 45th pick, Juhann Begarin, I think is the pronunciation we're going with. Just 18 years old. What is the plan for him initially?
Well, I think we're still figuring that out. I think he's likely to be, overseas next year. But we'll take the next few weeks and figure all that stuff out. He is, again, really strong for his age. He's a great person, hard worker, and a heck of a basketball player. And so we're excited to have him. And, we'll figure out what that means for Summer League this year and what that means for where he'll be next year. But we're excited that he's a part of our organization.
Brad, we were just listening to your press conference, and you kind of alluded to you want some guys that can help accentuate Jaylen and Jason. You also maybe alluded to getting some veteran guys in here. Is that like sort of the plan moving forward, looking at your roster?
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think, when you talk about veteran Scal, you've been around the league and around a lot of different teams and players. And, I think that, and we saw this last year, we just have a lot of young guys on our roster. I mean, I think we were the second or third youngest team in the league last year. And yet, because we've got, a few guys that have played in the biggest moments, I think we've missed, sometimes have not realized that. And I think it's really important that those guys that we're building around are accentuated by people that know their roles, that understand, what winning looks like, why every detail matters, and can help bring that out of each other. I think that we've had guys in the past that have done that really well. We've been on a fortunate streak of, a bunch of years in a row in the playoffs and some good long runs. But, for last year to just be a blip and not be more of what we are, then we need to make sure that we are additive with respect to, people that can accentuate and bring strengths out of each other.
Brad, one of the words I think you used was edge and experience. What does edge mean to you, and what would the qualities be of the players that you would try to target with that?
Well, everybody's going to bring different strengths to the table. I think when I talk about edge, that can be a number of things. It can be starts with competitiveness, starts with a willingness to do hard things, unselfishness to do hard things, and not necessarily always reap the rewards of, the person that gets the headlines, right? I think that it's so important that teams are built with, people that bring different things to the table and bring a toughness to the table that, kind of permeates throughout the team. And so, when I talk about edge, you can obviously talk about a physical toughness or a mental toughness, a grit that you see very easily in others. You can also talk about like the desire to be a part of something special and represent this place, with, kind of that toughness and grit that, our fans love. And I think that those are things that are going to be important, and they're going to be important as we continue to look for, again, the right fits around our team. It's important that our guys that are back continue to embrace those things.
Brad, free agency is just 4 days away. And as you said moments ago during your press conference, there are a lot of things that still need to be done to set yourselves up to make good things happen for this team. So as you look ahead and turn the page from the draft, where are your priorities? What are the points of emphasis for you right now?
Yeah, really just what I talked about with regard to adding people that add to the whole, add to the good of the whole, that bring out the best in others, that can accentuate others, that are good fits for what we're trying to accomplish while managing and navigating, where we are financially and where we want to be from a long-term perspective.
Coach, Brad, I'm going to have to figure that out. Mr. President.
There you go.
So you've watched the NBA playoffs, been involved in the NBA playoffs from a coaching standpoint. Was it different watching these playoffs, the finals, from now your position as president of basketball operations?
No, and I think that's what I have to do. I think anytime you're in a new position where you don't have all the answers, right, is you have to soar with what you do know best, and that is, I've coached a lot of games in the NBA, and I've been here for 8 years and seen it through that lens, and so I still very much look through it through that lens. And it is interesting when you get into the front office discussions, what's super important to people that have coached and haven't coached. And I think that that's good discussions. It's often lively discussions. And, Scal, you've been on those sidelines, you kind of know. And so but I think that I'm going to say that needs to be a strength and a uniqueness of me in this position, because I still have a long way to go in a lot of other ways.
Brad, what'd you make of, like a team like Atlanta, who had a rocky start but ended up, in the Eastern Conference Finals? Phoenix Suns, add Chris Paul, Milwaukee Bucks, small market. Like, what'd you make of, like the playoffs this year compared to years past?
Well, I do think this is well documented. It was a weird year. And I think you saw some teams really play well. And, some maybe when you talk about Atlanta's long run or Phoenix's long run, teams that were really deserving of a long run that maybe you wouldn't have predicted at the start of the year, but they played great. They had really good players. And when you really looked at it, it's not that big of a surprise, right? But this was a tough year because of the navigating of all the circumstances for every team. But I thought, that being said, that the NBA Finals were a great version of basketball. I thought that the Suns and Bucks put on a show. I thought it was physical. I thought it was tough. I thought it was, relentless from a play standpoint. I thought both teams just competed the way that you want basketball teams to compete. I have so much respect for the way the Suns left it all out there and the way the Bucks finished it off. And, their size and physicality obviously had a huge impact on winning that series. And so thought the season ended well from the standpoint of the NBA. That product on the floor was high level. You know, a lot of us are shooting to, try to be in that position.
Brad, how's Jaylen's hand recovery going? And Rob Williams, is he been able to get back on the floor since the playoffs with the turf toe and all that? And then finally, just watching Jason from afar, what have you been able to be in communication with Ime and them, and how's that going over there from your vantage point?
Well, I went and saw those guys in Vegas when practice started. So I was at the first 2 or 3 days of USA practice, and then before they left for Tokyo, and I talked to Ime every day, and talked to Jason just yesterday, and they seem to be doing all right. I do think it's a unique Olympics, and they by no means have complained at all. So please don't put words in their mouth, but being basically in your hotel and being there without fans and everything else, it is a truly unique experience when you're 13 hours removed from where you are or your time zone that you'll live in. And I think, but from the standpoint of Rob is getting better, looks good. Saw him a couple days ago. I think that if he hasn't cleared to play today, he's cleared to play anytime soon. And Jaylen just had another scan, looks great. He's been working out here every day, and has done stuff with other people on the floor with him. And supposedly will be cleared for live contact within the next couple of weeks. So both guys should be ready to not only be cleared for training camp, but, far before that, so that they can ramp up appropriately.
No rest for the weary for Mr. President, who went right from pretty much coaching the bubble into this crazy COVID season to changing job responsibilities to catching up on the draft and now diving into his first free agency at the helm. And it's a big one, I know it can be a little bit frustrating for Celtics fans to not be in the position where you have the assets or the cap space to go make a big splash this summer. But to me, there's still big decisions ahead. And I mean, it starts with Evan Fournier and what you're going to pay him. Do you extend Marcus Smart? Do you extend Robert Williams? Like, what does the back end of this roster look like? And I thought that was the most interesting thing that Brad said in our conversation. And it started in the group media right after the draft, where he said he wanted players with edge and experience. And that's why I kind of pressed him on what he means by edge, and I thought he didn't have, the defined definition there, but obviously it's guys that fit that grit category that Brad loves, and guys that are willing to maybe put the team ahead of themselves, guys that are willing to buy into the notion of this is Jason and Jaylen's team, and how do you make them better? How do they make that player better? And so if everyone buys into that, then this team, I think, has a chance to really be far more successful than it was last year. Scal sort of pushed back on me when I said that upgrades on the back end of the roster could really aid this team this year. His belief, and understandably so, is that like a lot of it rides on what Jason and Jaylen do. Does Jason go up another level as Jaylen comes off this injury? Can he go to an even another step after his first All-Star campaign? That will dictate overall just how far these Celtics go. But I do think some of the stress could be alleviated if Brad Stevens does add some of those players with edge and experience on the back end of the roster. I see the Kings draft another guard, Davion Mitchell, and they've already got Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield still on that roster. Could the Celtics make a play with their trade exceptions and go get a DeLon Wright to add some point guard depth behind Marcus Smart and alongside Peyton Pritchard, add a little bench scoring that, the bench just wasn't always consistent with being able to take some stress off that first unit. And so I think with the right pieces in place, and this team doesn't need the too big of a move this offseason. Again, they just don't have the resources depending on how it plays out with Evan Fournier. But eager to see how Brad stitches this all together and what happens. You talked a little bit about Summer League. Sounds like most of the young guys will be there. Juhann Begarin will obviously be sort of the focal point, the international man of mystery, the Israeli Steph Curry. We'll see what he can show. And, maybe he's part of the equation at the point guard spot. I think it's more likely that he maybe spends another year overseas, leaves Israel maybe and goes and earns a little bit more money, maybe a Euro League team or another chance for an overseas payday before he signs that sort of. It's crazy to say, but, his NBA contract will probably be lower than what he can make overseas and starts that NBA experience. But, it is fun watching the highlights there. And that ultimately is what it comes down to with these late second round picks. You just sort of cross on your fingers, hoping that you see something, you see the potential for them to grow and that they buy in, and the allure of getting to the NBA level is enough to drive them to be better. Madar certainly posted that his workout videos are fun to watch, and his highlights have been great. I'm eager to see how he stacks up against some of the younger competition here in the NBA at Summer League when the Celtics tip off on August 8th. And it sounds like a lot of the younger guys will be out there, even Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, chance to get some reps and get ready for a new season when those guys could be very important to supplementing the core of this team. I thought the other big thing from the Brad interview was just the update on Jaylen and Rob. It's only been a couple, little over a month and a half since the end of the season. We saw Romeo when he had a very similar surgery to Jaylen. It lingered into the next season, and obviously there was a shorter off season coming off the bubble. But if you looked at the timelines, it was going to push Jaylen. It's seemingly close up against the start of the 21-22 season. And I think part of the reason he went under the knife when he did was with hopes that he could get healthy and get back out there. But good to hear that his recovery has been on time, that the scans have been good, that he's going to be cleared for some live contact coming up in the coming weeks. And we'll get a little bit of a ramp up to training camp and that full camp experience to be able to get back and be sort of the all-star player that he was. And for the Celtics to really hit the ground running. This is a chance where if everyone's healthy, if Rob's healthy, if Jaylen's healthy, if you get Tatum back and give him a little bit of a break after Team USA, maybe there's a chance to really launch. And I'm just eager to see what this looks like in a more normal season and what the Celtics learned from last year. But again, it all comes down to the roster construct and what Brad Stevens is able to do this offseason. The draft might not have been a lot of fireworks, but I think the next few days as we get ready for free agency, the tampering is hot and heavy, and the rumors are going to be flying. And we'll be back here on the Celtics Talk Podcast next week to break it all down and get ready for some summer league action. So, all right, everybody to go like and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Go subscribe on our YouTube channel. Love that you guys are checking us out over there to watch these interviews and see me sipping my coffee as we go through this. Leave us a comment down there. Tell us how we're doing, what you'd like to see. We'll catch you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.